And his twin brother, Reggie, controlled organised crime in the East End of London in the 60s. Both were jailed for life in 1969 after being convicted of murder.
Born in 1933 in the heart of the East End, Ronnie and his twin brother Reggie started out as boxers. They became the most feared of London's gang leaders. Ronnie, the eldest by 45 minutes, was the violent, dominant partner. Their extensive protection racket, known as the Firm, existed to extort money from shopkeepers, enabling the twins to visibly enjoy the high life. Desperate for fame, they cultivated the world of show business and the media. But the law was aware of them. In the mid-60s, the pair were charged with demanding money with menaces, only to be acquitted.
How much has this trial cost you?
It's cost us roughly £8,000.
And how do you feel about that?
I don't suppose anyone likes the idea of spending that money for no reason at all, you know.
Does it leave you broke, or how does it leave you?
It doesn't leave us broke, but at the same time it's a lot of money to have to pay out when money's innocent.
Ronnie held court in his front room in Bethnal Green, controlling West End protection, masterminding swindles, ordering killings over cups of tea. It was at the Blind Beggar pub in Whitechapel that Ronnie himself shot dead a rival, George Cornell. For that and another murder by Reggie, the pair were jailed in 1969.
I think they're an extraordinarily murderous, effective pair of gangsters. I think that's been covered up, I say, with a lot of schmaltz, a lot of silly sentimental twaddle, but they were very, very good at their job. If they hadn't started killing people, they probably would have been in the House of Lords by now.
Didn't hide the fact that he was a homosexual. No. He liked young boys, young men. There were writers, there were the politicians, like the famous ones like Boothby, Dryburgh and a few others. Supposing Ronnie might fancy a showbiz, so he used to put what they call a W out. It's a warrant. Anybody can get him back to the twins would get a payment of some sort of cash. We were all up the West End somewhere one night in this well-known Chinese place, and we saw this guy sitting on his own. And Ronnie spotted him and said, "Who's that?" And somebody said, "That's Cliff Richards, an up-and-coming star, you know." And, I'd like to meet him, you know. So straight away there's a W out for him. If anyone can get him in to a meet, that's all he's got to do. Old Cliff, I don't particularly like his singing and all that, but he don't seem a bad guy. I wouldn't hate to see him involved with that sort of person, you know.
I thought, well, this has gone far enough, and now I think I should write an expose news story. I knew that once I'd done that, I was finished as far as the Krays were concerned, but it was a story which, in my view, needed to be published, and everybody needed to be made aware of what they really were, so that no more titled people or prominent show business people should be caught up in their web.
The problem was the sexual revelation at the heart of the story. The newspaper was delighted with the scoop and wanted to run it. Lucas himself was not so sure.
I said, well, we can't. We can run the story about their association with a peer, but we must not use the word homosexual, because who are we going to call if Boothby sues? Who can we call to prove this? We'll be sued for libel.
But Lucas was overruled. The newspaper's lawyer, Philip Levy, worked out a formula to protect the Mirror from a libel action.
And Levy said, well, as long as you just say that Yard are probing a homosexual relationship between Ronald Kray and a peer, you will be safe. And but don't mention Lord Boothby's name.
The allegation was inserted into Lucas's story. The Mirror went ahead and published.
But then, of course, the walls came tumbling down on the Monday, because Boothby did the most cunning thing in the world. He wrote a letter to the Times saying, everybody says this is me. And on that basis, he sued us. and got £46,000 damages, which, as I learned just 48 hours later, after he got the money, he was forced to hand over to the Krays, who blackmailed him and said, well, if you don't, we will say this is a true story.
Now the Kray twins seemed untouchable, but the old demons of paranoia returned to haunt Ronnie. The slightest squeak of opposition was enough to trigger the most extreme of responses.
With Ronnie, it was different. It was a bit more weird, if you like, because other people's violence, if he heard about it, he would get them to sit down and give it to him detail by detail. He got something out of it, you know. He was definitely Freddy Krueger type person, you know. I mean, Ronnie would smash somebody. He would literally smash them, you know, with whatever he had in his hand. Doesn't matter if it was a hammer, a bayonet, or an axe, or whatever. He would just slice somebody for the wrong word.
One man with no respect was George Cornell, who had publicly ridiculed Ronnie for his sexual preferences.
People said to him, George, you know, you want to be careful. You're going over the top. Ronnie won't stand for this if you go. You know what he is? He's a nutter. That's how people say. He won't stand for this. And he carried on and on. Ronnie even said to me, I don't know what he thinks he is, that Cornell, he better not go too far with me.
In 1966, Cornell drove into the heart of Kray territory to take a very public drink in the Blind Beggar pub with his South London friend, Albie Woods.
We walked in the pub, we walked to the end of the bar. George plunked himself right in the corner with his back to a partition, and by the side of George there were some curtains which led into the public bar.
And this was at 8:10 in the evening. There were a number of other people in the pub, 32 people altogether, in fact. And the barmaid was behind the bar and so on. It was the normal kind of evening in a pub of that kind, when suddenly the door burst open and Ronnie Kray walked in with another man.
I sensed someone had stopped a couple of feet before they've reached me and about a step backwards, like, you know, near enough behind me. I looked back at George. I noticed there was a gun pointing at George. I looked back at George quick. George was really sneering at him.
Ronnie drew from his pocket a Luger automatic gun and just pointed it at Cornell's head and shot him straight through the forehead.
Well, it was absolutely terrible. You can imagine being there and there's people firing guns like in your direction. All I got is a stool, you know, in front of me. And, you know, what for, I don't know. The stool wasn't going to do any good. You don't think of nothing. You know, all I was thinking of was any second, like, it's going to be me.
Within minutes, the bar was empty. People were gone. The people that were with Cornell had left.
George was moaning and sort of groaning, like, you know. Anyway, I stood up. There was nothing I could do. I knew the ambulance was on its way and I didn't want to get involved, and I walked out the pub.
There was really no motive. It was just a question of Ronnie trying to assert himself as a gang leader, to show that he was like the Americans, that he'd got his button, as they say, that he'd killed his man. He wanted to show his gang that he was really the colonel. He wanted the public to know that he was a gang leader. And so it was with this in mind that he was able to walk into the Blind Beggars with 32 other people inside, with no attempt to disguise himself, confident because of his ability as a gang leader that he could walk in there and know that no one would give evidence against him.
Charlie Kray was unaware of the shooting. A few hours later, he was summoned to meet Ronnie.
I said, what's the matter? He said, oh, I've just shot Cornell. So I said, oh, what are you, man? What, in a pub? You've gone in a pub and shot someone in a pub? Oh, I said, oh, do me a favour, Ron. You know what'll happen now. They'll have you by tomorrow. Don't worry about that.
Ronnie eluded the police, but it wasn't long before they caught up with Albie Woods.
They said, right, now we want you to name who killed George Cornell. I said, I don't know who killed George Cornell. I said, I never saw their face. I said, it happened so quickly. I said, and, you know, just that they were standing behind me. I said, the shot, you know, went right across my face into George.
And when we tried to get witnesses, people said they didn't see anything, they didn't hear anything. You know, it's as if the thing had never happened. The barmaid said she was downstairs. She was in the cellars trying to get some more drinks up and things of that kind. And so that there was this desperate situation where suddenly this dramatic event had taken place and nobody had seen anything.
But they kept trying and kept putting plenty of pressure on, and you know, but with all the pressure and all what I was offered, you know, no way could they win with me. I'd sooner be inside for the rest of my life than, you know, grass people up.
When I think about the Cornell case and all the problems, that was really the beginning of the worst problems I was ever going to have. When I knew what happened, when they told me, I thought, I was just sick inside, you know, and I thought then that this is the beginning of the end.
Further evidence of Ronnie's deteriorating condition was the extraordinary scheme to spring his old friend, Mad Axeman Frank Mitchell, from Dartmoor jail in the absurd hope that it would force the Home Office to grant him an early release. In fact, it was hardly an escape at all. Mitchell simply walked away from a moorland work party and was picked up in a car by Donahue.
We were actually in Fulham when he came on the news that he'd been reported missing. Anyway, he wound up in a flat over in Barking and he started performing. You imagine, if all the psychiatrists and screws and whatever can't control this guy, what chance have the twins got, you know? Yeah, we got him a girl, hostess out one of the clubs, keeping quiet. That worked for a couple of weeks.
But it soon became clear that Frank Mitchell was more trouble alive than dead.
They wanted him to give himself up and go back to prison. But of course, it was too late then. Mitchell had enjoyed this comfort, relative comfort. He'd enjoyed the pleasures of this young girl. And so he said, no, I'm not going back. And then he became an encumbrance. And so then it was decided that they'd got to do something very positive about him. They told Mitchell that he was going to another house in Kent.
It has never been proved who was behind the events that unfolded next.
Pack up, get him out of the flat, take him round the corner. The guy stood on the pavement. Oh, Frank got in first. I went to sit beside him. They said, now you go up the front and tell the driver how to get back to the tunnel. And I'm saying to the driver like a plum, I'm saying just go down, do a right and you're back on Barking Road. In the meantime, the guy shut the back doors. He's come round to where he's going to sit in the passenger door. Gets in. The van is running now. He gets in. As he slams the passenger door, I later found out that was the signal. I'm still leaning like an idiot talking to the driver. Bow, bow, bow. The guns start off behind me. And they just kept popping the man. And he came off the casing onto his knees and then he fell back. And these bullets were going all over him. Then he sort of went still. And one of the guys leaned over and put 3 shots in around the heart. You could see his shirt jumping. And now we're moving. We've done the first right, we're going up, we've got to do the next right. All of a sudden there's a groan. So the guy said, he ain't dead. Give him another one, I'm empty. Now, I'm started thinking, I've got to go as well here. I'm piggy in the middle. Yeah. I was pleased to hear one guy's empty. Anyway, the other guy puts the gun behind his ear and pop. That's the last shot that was fired. Now I'm thinking, the next thing I can do is dive in this cab amongst these two and just start kicking and punching till I can get out. I'm firmly convinced I'm going to die. Anyway, we now come back up to the old Barking Road. So I said, right, all you got to do, drop me off here. Hopefully. So the back door was opened, I got out. And I started walking away. I was still waiting for one in the back of the nut as I was walking away. But when I heard the van pull off, that was it, I was pleased.
Ronnie's lust for violence was beyond control. This increased the pressure on Reggie, His marriage to childhood sweetheart Frances Shea was cracking under the strain of her husband's criminal lifestyle.
Well, she would smile, but, I mean, what's a smile, you know? You can sit in a dentist's chair and open your mouth and it looks like you're smiling, but there was a lot of glamour to it, I suppose, and it must have looked nice at the time, but when she actually saw how the whole thing was made up, with Ronnie screaming in the background and going into his troughs, she must have got sick of, probably frightened of it as well. See, because in the early days they were both homosexual, and then Reggie sort of came away from it. He has asked me how you actually touch a woman to make her excited, liven her up. He didn't know where you touched her, how you touched her or what. And be honest with you, I don't think he knew where to put it while he was married. The problem was, an ordinary person would have gone through a divorce and met someone else. Now, she couldn't do that. If you can imagine some handsome young chap falling for Franny Kray, and Reggie heard about it, you know, he's going to have his legs cut off. You know, so she could never have another life, sort of thing.
Just 2 years after her celebrity-style wedding, Franny Kray killed herself with an overdose of sleeping tablets.
I've never known anyone in my life to idolise someone like he did her. He really did idolise her. And when she died, it slaughtered Reggie. He was taking tranquilisers, he was drinking, and he was never in a right frame of mind for a long, long time. It just crucified him.
Distraught with grief, Reggie Kray was unable to help Ronnie in his desperate struggle with madness.
If you went to the house, you would see him sitting in his armchair and he'd be like this. He'd be chain smoking and he'd be popping these heavy pills and scowling. He used to scowl a lot. And if somebody said something, it'd be like a general conversation going on. And if he wanted to listen to one particular person, he'd shut up, you. And now you knew it was time to shut up, because, see, with Ronnie, you could say to him one day, time to go down the caravan or something, you look like you're putting on a bit of weight. That'd be okay. You could say exactly the same thing tomorrow. And you would have to fight for your life.
Still no one dared to give evidence against Ronnie. But any chance he might have had of getting away with the murder of George Cornell was smashed the night his brother Reggie killed Jack McVitie with a carving knife.
Jack was a man who had to have a drink and a good time. He was a typical what you call a villain. He was over the counter, and what I mean by that, he'd been convicted of bank robberies, he had a record of violence. I'm just giving you a background of what Jack McVitie was like. And it came at a point where I think people started to get a bit fed up with him, bad-mouthing people. All of a sudden, Reggie walked in. Now, right away I knew something was wrong, the way Reggie was reacting. We'd all been drinking that night, because he was biting his lip, Reggie. He wasn't sure, I always got the opinion he wasn't sure what was going on. And he said, "Who's downstairs?" So I said, "Well, it's me." He said, "No, it's Jack the Actor." And I went, "Yeah." And he bit his lip. I come upstairs to get a pack of cigarettes out of the machine, and Tony Barry's walking towards me, the club owner. And he says to me, "There's a party around at Blonchel's."
So we go down to Blonchel's house, which is Nevering Road, and we're having a bit of a joke on the way down. And we go in, and we go down the stairs, and Jack goes running in the room. "Where's the party? Where's the party?"
When I walk into the room, I see Ronnie over in the corner, watching television. And the next thing, Ronnie pushed past me, went hello Tony, and he hit Jack under the eye of a glass, a gin glass, little glass it was, and he cut him under the left eye. But the next thing that happened, Reggie got a knife in his hand. And Hart pinned him, for some reason, got hold of him. And he let him go, and Reggie tried to shoot him. But the gun failed to go off. It's a 32 Mauser. It was a brand new one.
Come on, I mean, I don't believe this is happening. These are professional people. I mean, these are the most professional villains in London. You don't do these kind of things. I thought, what have I got myself involved in here? And I said to, I think it was Connie White, I said, Connie, I don't want no part of this. This is so out of order. And Ronnie Kray came out and he said, what's the matter with Chris? And Connie said he didn't come down here for this.
In the meantime, Jack jumped up, and this is what exactly happened. He walked over to the window and he punched the window. And the words he said were this: who do they think they are? And he punched the window in timber.
And for the first time I was scared. That's what I really felt. I've never told anybody that. And in some ways I felt a coward. There was a part of me wanting to run in and just help the guy out. And a part of me held back because Tony was there, and I mean, I didn't know what he knew or what he didn't know. So I'm really on the horns of a dilemma, you know. Whichever way I turn, I mean, I've got a sword hanging over my head.